Mike Wolfe heads back to Iowa. Is he visiting Frank Fritz? American Pickers star Mike Wolfe announced to the show's fans the news that Frank Fritz had a stroke and was in the hospital. He asked fans for their prayers, but this went across badly based on the problems that had risen between the two former friends over the last 2 years. Frank had said in recent interviews that he had not spoken to Mike in 2 years, and that his childhood friend had never even reached out to check on him after his back surgery. Instead, American Pickers fired Frank and left him injured and without a job. However, there looks like the two could finally going to bury the hatchet. Mike Wolfe is in Iowa after Frank Fritz's stroke. When Mike announced that Frank was in the hospital following a stroke, he asked fans for their prayers. He also mentioned there was a lot that happened between them over the last year. In an Instagram post, he wrote, "There has been lots of opinions in regards to mine and Frank's friendship. And the show but now is not the time to set their records straight. Now is the time to pray for my friend." Now Mike has posted some photos that make it look like he is in Iowa, which is where Frank is hospitalized. In a photo posted today, Mike had a photo of his mom and daughter together, writing, "The two most important ladies in my life." Mama Wolfe and Baby Wolfe, seeing them together brings tears of joy to my eyes. Everything else fades away, and my world feels complete. Mike also posted an Instagram photo of a riverboat in LeClaire, Iowa, and wrote, "Back and visit LeClaire, Main Street on the Mississippi River." With Mike back home, could Fritz's medical emergency be the reason? American Pickers fans want Mike and Fritz to make up. While fans have been quick to slam Mike Wolfe for how he treated Frank Fritz over the last 2 years, many American Pickers faithful just want them to make up and rekindle their friendship. The 911 call for Frank came when a friend arrived at his Iowa home and found him on the floor. He called and said that Frank could not move or communicate, and the American Pickers star was rushed to the hospital. While Mike's Instagram post asking for prayers received backlash from fans who felt he did Frank wrong, others were there for the two. In the comments on the post, one fan wrote, "I'm so sorry to hear this, and I hope the two of you were able to heal old wounds." The sun cast its warm glow over the winding backroads of Tennessee as Mike Wolfe leaned against the hood of his vintage Ford truck, a rare 1955 model he had tracked down years earlier during one of his many American Pickers escapades. The machine hummed quietly beneath him, waiting like a loyal dog poised for a new adventure. But today, the journey was not just about finding forgotten treasures or uncovering the rust-covered past of America. Today, it was personal. He glanced down at the map spread across the dashboard, tracing the line of I-74 that stretched like a vein back to Iowa, his home state. The place that cradled his childhood dreams and witnessed his rise from a scrappy kid rummaging through old barns to the face of a cultural phenomenon. But Mike wasn't headed to Iowa for nostalgia or comfort this time. He was headed back to see Frank. Frank Fritz, his longtime co-star and partner in picking, had been a friend, a brother in the world of dusty relics and road miles. Their camaraderie was the heartbeat of American Pickers, a dance of differing styles. Frank's meticulous eye for oil cans and signs juxtaposed against Mike's appetite for eccentric oddities and grand finds. But the unyielding march of time, combined with personal struggles and misunderstandings, had frayed that bond. Mike adjusted his worn baseball cap and sighed. The news of Frank's stroke had hit him harder than he let on, shoving aside any past grievances or the sting of their public split. Rumors swirled that Mike's fame and expansion plans had driven a wedge between them, that Frank felt sidelined and replaced. Maybe there was truth in that. Maybe there wasn't. Either way, the shadows of the past seemed smaller when cast against the fragility of the present. The road stretched out before him, a strip of asphalt that promised long hours in solitude. Mike welcomed it. The wind whistled past the open window as miles of cornfields blurred by, golden tassels swaying like an audience to an unseen symphony. As a kid, he used to cycle down these very roads, his pockets stuffed with marbles and bottle caps, his eyes always scanning the horizon for a barn that whispered secrets of forgotten treasures. Today, the search felt different. He had called ahead, speaking briefly with Ravi, Frank's close friend and caretaker since the stroke. The man's voice was tinged with hope, a careful optimism that carried the weight of uncertainty. "He's stable, Mike," Ravi had said. "He's fighting, but I think he'd be happy to see you." The last time Mike saw Frank face to face was before everything fell apart. A tense conversation, words laced with the frustration of years spent in each other's company, both trying to find their place in the sprawling world of fame they'd unexpectedly inhabited. Mike wondered now if it was pride that had kept him away, the silent kind that gnawed at the edges of his conscience and turned into regret too late. The truck's tires crunched over the gravel driveway leading up to Frank's modest home, a quaint place surrounded by sprawling oaks and patches of wildflowers. Ravi stepped out from the side door, raising a hand in greeting. He looked older than Mike remembered, with lines that spoke of sleepless nights and worry. "He's out back," Ravi said, nodding toward the garden where Frank had always loved to spend his afternoons. Mike's boots sank slightly into the soft grass as he walked. There in the shade of a sprawling oak sat Frank in a worn wicker chair. He looked smaller, frailer, but his eyes still held that familiar glint. The sight of him, thinner and more subdued, struck a chord in Mike that resonated with guilt, fondness, and relief. "Mike," Frank's voice cracked, but the smile was there, tentative and real. "Hey, buddy," Mike said, his voice catching slightly as he took a seat on a stone bench nearby. For a moment, the silence hung between them like an unspoken truce, the air thick with all the things that needed saying but wouldn't find words. "You didn't bring back any junk this time, did you?" Frank quipped, a flicker of his old humor breaking through the strain. Mike chuckled, the sound of it surprising him with its familiarity. "Not this time, Frank, just me and the road." The afternoon sun dappled the ground in patches of light and shadow, and as they sat, the quiet gave way to the comfortable hum of cicadas. Mike spoke first, recounting the latest pick that brought him face to face with an antique motorcycle, one Frank would have loved. Frank listened, nodding slowly, the old spark brightening his eyes now and then. They reminisced about their early days on the road, the miles they logged crisscrossing the Midwest, knocking on doors of strangers who soon became stories. They spoke of places where time stood still, barns that felt like museums to memories, their shelves lined with things the world had long forgotten. "I miss it," Frank admitted, his voice softer. "The thrill of finding something no one else sees. We were good at that." Mike's throat tightened. "We were," he said, leaning forward. "And we still could be." A shadow of regret flickered across Frank's face before settling into something softer. He reached out, a slight tremor in his hand, and Mike took it, squeezing it lightly. The gesture spoke more than either could say, a silent bridge spanning the gap years in the making. The golden light of the day waned, casting their silhouettes long across the grass. For now, the ghosts of their past lay quiet, the future undefined but not unwelcomed. Mike knew this was just one visit, that healing wasn't an overnight endeavor. But it was a start, one he hadn't known he needed until he was there, sitting beside his old friend, the weight of old tensions slipping away with each shared story. As the first stars pricked through the twilight sky, Mike knew that the road would always call to him. But this time, as he climbed into his truck and waved goodbye, he realized that some of the most important journeys weren't about the miles traveled, but the ones that brought you back home.